Welcome to the Headlinesman. I'm your host, James Moody. I want to dive into this video and just give you an idea of why I'm making these types of videos moving forward and really what I want to accomplish with these types of videos. I am not a professional referee by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a unique perspective when it comes to officiating, as well as the rules based upon my experience. When I look at the types of videos I want to make, I do want to focus mainly on football and basketball, but maybe we'll get into some baseball and some other sports. But really, those are the two sports where we're going to focus on. And here's kind of why. Almost 2 weeks ago, we all experienced a National Football Conference championship game that really, in my opinion, changed the landscape of professional sports officiating. And I want to walk through my feelings of that game, what happened, why, maybe even give an unpopular opinion and defend some NFL officials. My opinion with the NFL officials won't be popular. I can guarantee that, but I can definitely back it with what I feel happened and the why. And that's a unique perspective in my mind, and I want to share that with others. I want to get that out there and help you guys understand that there's more to officiating a football game than just what ESPN or whoever's going to tell you. It's funny that I bring up ESPN because I'm going to pitch an article that they have posted on their website. It's a great article by Ryan McGee titled, "Why in the World Would Anyone Want to Be a Referee?" I would recommend going to ESPN tonight, reading it. It's a fantastic article. So moving forward, what to expect. I want to share incidents within those two major sports, football, basketball. Like I said, maybe we'll talk some baseball when the spring and summer come. And really kind of dive into what happened, why, is our reaction reasonable and rational? Like that's really where my mind focuses. Is sometimes we see officials make bad decisions on the field, and we always jump to like, oh, they must be horrible at their jobs. Like, well, no, how about they're human beings and they make mistakes, but at the same time, maybe there's a reason for the mistake. Let's actually dive in and look at it instead of just cast stones because we believe that officials shouldn't be people. Along those lines, the worst thing that's going to come from this NFC Championship game missed call is this idea that's out there, and it's been generated by people from ESPN, Fox Sports, all over the internet of let's make pass interference reviewable. That is the worst decision that the NFL can make. And I would beg everyone at the National Football League office to not do that. Okay? Let's look at something like turnovers. So something like a fumble. Okay? It's, in my opinion, the worst play in football right now. Because what happens, guys carrying the ball, gets hit, ball pops out, who knows if he's down or not. They've taught their officials not to blow their whistle because they know they've got review, right? So what you're going to have is you're going to have officials seeing plays happen and not make the call that they know in their mind is the right call to make because they're going to rely on replay. That's absurd and stupid. That's not how the game was designed to be played. That's not how it was designed to be officiated. It's the worst decision the NFL could make. And please don't do it. Okay? My big thing, and you're going to see with the videos that follow this, is let's not make the rules of these sports more subjective. What's a catch in the NFL? I don't know. Apparently the ball can hit the ground, but maybe it has control and all this other crap that goes into it. No, how about we make a rule? If the ball hits the ground, it's not a catch. You know what happens outside, Judge? He actually sees it hit the ground. No catch. It's not hard. Figure it out. Make the rules less subjective. That way, a game's happening so fast, they don't have to think 900 million miles an hour. They just have to see the basic aspects of the game play out and make the right call accordingly. Okay, with that being said, calm down a bit. Let's get right into it. Let's start out with that NFC Championship game that we talked about. All right, so this is play one of the NFC Championship. We're going to talk about defensive pass interference, holding, and illegal contact, because this play actually could fit into all three of those. So we've got the definitions of all three we're going to put up on the board here. So you can see illegal contact beyond the 5-yard zone is what we're looking at. defensive holding, and the definition of pass interference. So really with this play, what we want to focus on where the contact takes place, whether it's still in the 5-yard zone or not, and then what the deal with the ball is, meaning has Drew Brees thrown the ball yet or not? If not, then you're looking at illegal contact or holding, depending on where things are taking place and what actually the contact is, right? But let's take a look at this play and see what we think based on the play itself. Okay, so you can see here, contact's made. We're looking about 8 or 9 yards down the field when that initial contact is made. And based on that, based on the fact that Drew Brees has clearly thrown the ball when the contact is made right here, this should, in my opinion, have been called as defensive pass interference based on the definitions. So let's read that real quick. So this is Rule 8, Section 4, Article 1. It is pass interference by either team when any act by a player more than 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage significantly hinders an eligible player's opportunity to catch the ball. Pass interference can only occur when a forward pass is thrown from behind the line of scrimmage, regardless of whether the pass is legal or illegal, or whether it crosses the line. Defensive pass interference rules apply from the time the ball is thrown until the ball is touched. See Article 2 for prohibited acts while the ball is in the air. And we already looked at those and read those earlier. But this is defensive pass interference. On to play number 2. All right, so this is it. This is the play that I really wanted to talk about. It's a play that's on everybody's mind the last 2 weeks almost. Let's talk about it and see what we think. Obviously we've talked about offensive and defensive pass interference. I kind of did that on purpose, building up to this play, so we have a pretty good understanding of what we're looking at. But let's look at the play and see what we've got. Okay, so the first thing with this play, I want to kind of show you, where the officials are at, right? So you can see we've got an official at the line of scrimmage down here. The point I want to make with him is I don't think this official can see this play. The reason why I make that argument is if you look here, he's looking at the players. The ball is behind the players. He may not be able to see the ball very well. And so that's my point with him. This is your line judge or your down judge is what the NFL calls the position that high school and college call the head linesman, but we won't argue about his title. We'll just call him Mr. Official and we'll move on. But he is in a weird place where I don't think he can really see where the ball is in correlation to the contact. So I'm sure he sees the contact, but I don't think he knows where the ball is. So if the ball is back here, it's actually past the receiver because the receiver was up here when the contact took place. Keep that in mind, is that sometimes angles do matter. Official number 2 on this play is back here. You can see him towards the at the goal line, 5 yards off the sideline, give or take. He might even be a little deeper than that. Can't really tell exactly where he's standing, but he's right where he should be. When I originally saw this play live, I was worried that maybe he was out of position or maybe he didn't see it because he was up too far. That's what I was worried about. After watching the replays, he's right where he was supposed to be. Now, with that in mind, we're going to have the same type of conversation we just had with our down judge or our line judge, is I'm not sure if this side judge or this field judge could actually see where the ball was in correlation to the contact. Now, I don't know that. No one knows that except for him. He knows what he saw. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I will in my mind, mainly because I understand how fast this game is played. You've got the fastest players in the world. I'm willing to say maybe he couldn't actually see where the ball was in correlation to the contact. Now, there is a replay that Fox uses here that is actually pretty close, I think, to probably the view that he had. And so if we look at that in the replay, we'll have a better idea of maybe what he saw. And so here's what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of pause and just show, here's possibly what he's seeing, is where is that ball in correlation to contact? Like, I know that, Aikman on the call is all freaking out and, saying it's pretty obvious, but, if he's back here another couple yards, that's a hard play to see, in my opinion, based on the angles, right? Now, let's be clear. It is defensive pass interference. I'm not going to ever say that this was not defensive pass interference by rule. All I wanted to make is the point that sometimes as an official, it's a lot harder to see live based on the angles that the officials actually have versus the camera angles that were provided by Fox, CBS, NBC, or whoever is televising the game. So keep that in mind the next time you try to crucify an official for for botching a call in a very crucial moment. These guys are human beings. They love what they do. That's the reason why I pointed out at the beginning of this episode to read the article by Ryan McGee at ESPN.com. I'll try to get a link in the bottom so you guys can just click and go to it. Read it. These guys love what they do or else they wouldn't do it. Believe me. That is the truth. And I will swear up and down to that officials and referees love the game. That's why they do it. And they're doing the best they can. Keep that in mind. All right. So I told you that opinion may not be popular with some of you. It's my feeling and opinion based on what I know and what I've seen and based on what I've read in the rules. So, hopefully you understand. I tried to share that with you guys, give you an understanding of how this can all happen and how things can play out on the football field. Anyway, enough of that NFC stuff. Let's move on to the AFC with the Patriots and the Chiefs. And here we go. All right, so here's play number 1 from the AFC Championship. So play number 1 and play number 2 from this game have to deal with offensive pass interference and pick plays. So what I want us to understand is what is offensive pass interference in correlation to pick plays. The NFL rulebook talks about this in Rule 8, Section 5, Article 4. It talks about prohibited acts by the offense. So it reads, blocking more than 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage by an offensive player prior to a pass being thrown is offensive pass interference. It says, see Rule 8, Section 3, Article 1 for an exception to the offensive player. So let's watch the play and we'll talk about it in a little bit more depth. So it's going to go to this replay and we're going to see exactly what offensive pass interference is. This is textbook definition. So you'll see that Philip Dorsett gets down the field, is clearly blocking before the pass is thrown, and that is textbook offensive pass interference. Not so much a pick play, but it definitely is offensive pass interference, and that's what I really want us to understand is this is something I believe in the game that isn't called as often. And there are a lot of defensive coaches in the NFL and other leagues that would attest to that. And it was good to see the NFL make that call. It needs to be called more often. So that's kind of what that is. The exception that it talks about in Rule 8, Section 3, Article 1 talks about how offensive linemen can actually block more than 1 yard down the field. But it gives some stipulations of what's legal there and what's not. It doesn't apply to this play, but I thought that was kind of relevant. To just mention that it does give further guidance on what is legal and what's not. So play 1 is very obviously an offensive pass interference, but should one have been called on play number 2? So let's take a look at this second play. Okay, so this is play number 2 from the AFC Championship game. So kind of keep in mind the same thing we just talked about with play number 1. Article 2, in that same rule and same section, talks about prohibited acts by both teams while the ball is in the air. The one we're looking at is E. So this is cutting off the path of an opponent by making contact with him without playing the ball. So keep that in mind as this play gets rolling, and you'll see what we're talking about. And in fact, Romo points it out. He does his little circle on his telestrator, does all that, and has some fun with the play. But let's watch that and see what we think. So when we highlight E, cutting off the path means that there could be interference. The thing we want to call out here is there is a note on the bottom of this article that says if there's any question whether player contact is incidental, the ruling should be no interference. So coming across here, player clearly makes some contact, clearly would be cutting off the path of the opponent to get to the ball, right? So that's the violation. Whether or not it's incidental, that's really up to the referee. And that is really a tough one. In my opinion, that is pass interference, and it probably should have been called. Kind of what we were just stating with play number 1 is I don't think stuff like this gets called nearly enough, and I think it should. It will help the defenses. Realistically, things like this should be called more often. This one's probably more difficult because it's going to be hard to see whether or not 17 was looking back for the ball or not. There's lots of things that kind of go into that, whether it was viewed as incidental or not. But really keep that in mind as you look at some of these pass interference calls and kind of understand where we're coming from there. All right, so that has it for the AFC. AFC obviously a lot less controversial, but there were some things that I feel are very important. We need to talk about the idea of what is pass interference on the offensive side of the ball as well. How does that impact a game? It had an impact in this game, and hopefully you come away from this video with a better understanding of what the NFL rulebook actually says. What it comes down to is rulebook says this. Sometimes there's an on-field application. Like I said, officials aren't perfect, and I think that's the beauty of it. Earlier in the video, I talked about that article from Ryan McGee at ESPN. Fantastically points that out, is that even the best officials in the world, which I do believe officiate in the NFL, they officiate in the NBA, they officiate in Major League Baseball, all those major professional leagues have the best officials. The end. Okay? There's no arguing that. There are great officials at all levels, don't get me wrong. Let's calm down, give these guys the benefit of the doubt, because more often than not, they're making the right decisions on the field. They're making the right calls. And overall, the game is successful because of them, right? Please read that article at ESPN. I encourage it. So what to expect moving forward? Obviously, Super Bowl is going to be played here in a couple days. I want to have a Super Bowl recap, going over some plays that I see in the Super Bowl that kind of get me curious about the rule book. Go over some of those things. Hopefully we don't have anything crazy controversial or a huge blown call. But you never know. We'll see. We'll see how the game plays out. And hopefully it's a good one. No one likes a bad Super Bowl. It all makes us grumpy the Monday after. All right, so after the Super Bowl, what do we do? So I'm a big football guy. That's where most of my officiating experience lies. At the same time, though, I do have some experience officiating basketball. I really enjoy doing that. Basketball is a different beast. I have some interesting perspectives with NBA officials. These officials in the NBA are, in my opinion, the most physically fit officials in the world. Okay? They referee a game that is crazy high-paced and has some of the best athletes in the world playing it, and they're able to get up and down the floor well enough to be able to, not make a mockery of the game, which I think is super impressive. They deserve every ounce of credit for that and for their ability and the expectation that is put upon them to make sure they can do that, obviously. But at the same time, I want to dive into NBA officials because I think they get some crap sometimes, and I think that there's some things worth exploring in the NBA world that the NBA should take a look at when it comes to officiating. I don't know if 3 officials can do it anymore. I think the game is too fast-paced for 3 guys, and based on their spacing on the floor, I really think it's a problem right now. We'll show you some clips. We'll dive into the rules of the game, what each rule book actually says, okay? Because I'll tell you what, having officiated games is the worst conversation you can have with whether it's a player, a coach, whoever, as an official, is with someone that actually does not know the rules of the game. It's just, you don't even have a starting point to have a conversation because they don't even know, right? So we'll talk about that, hopefully give you some more information, hopefully turning you into that fan that's in the stands that isn't the idiot who doesn't actually know the rules of the game. That's my goal. That's what I want to do. We'll see you next time.